Today's topic of discussion is going to be about something I love, which is animals. Um, to me, animals are such an intrinsic part of our environment. They are older than human beings. Some of them are wiser than human beings. They're far more instinctual. And some of them are a lot happier than human beings. It's strange to think on this planet that only recently have we been able to fundamentally put all of our records into one place, which is the internet. Whether it's our medical records, or our social security, or our money, or our date of birth, or census records, everything is logged now in a computer. And as well as that, things like our medical records are logged online. What kind of medication we're on, whether we are depressed, when do we go to the doctor, what are we seeing the doctor about. And I'm not saying this as conspiracy point of view. I'm saying this that it's fascinating that in the animal kingdom, you can have millions of bees die and nobody cares. And you can have, epidemics, and you can have, all of these stories in the animal kingdom that are heartbreaking and that are nature's way of kind of Darwinism. And yet they no one knows about them. I watched the movie March of the Penguins, which I really loved because it was just on the edge of nature. It was on the extremes, which I love. The extreme places, the extreme journeys. And the journey of the penguins was so fascinating to me because it's a journey that we can all relate to on a human level, which is trying to give birth, or having a kid, And I think that kind of thing is missing when I come back to art. In the arts, is that idea of a journey, the idea of a journey that has a goal but isn't fully about that goal. Is about the journey itself, not the end of the road, but the road itself, and what are the dangers of that journey. Now, a lot of movies are about journeys, they're about a goal and how the hero gets the goal. I'm saying to forget about the goal, is to only focus on the moments that make up somebody's journey. The key moments in life. If you look at the animal kingdom, something that I'm also really interested in is instinct. If you look at a dog and the way a dog moves, and the way a dog interacts, it's instinctual. There's not a lot of overthinking. The way that a tiger, creeps towards its prey, or a fish swimming in the ocean, it's completely instinctual. And human beings are not instinctual enough. And as actors, we're all actors in our lives. And we tend to think of ourselves as the hero of our own lives. But we're not very instinctual. We're very much intellectual, or cerebral, psychological. But that instinct, that animal instinct that is in all of us, is not something that we really think about very much. But I think it's a key to film, is the idea of instinct, the idea of what allows us to be instinctual, because film is looking at the brightest colors, the darkest colors, the most vibrant emotions, the most amazing memories, the strongest moments. It's always the extremes of emotion and feeling. And to get there, to get to those extremes, requires a lot of freedom, inner freedom, to go there, to go to the places that we can go if we want to, instead of being taken out of our experience. But it's also about instinct, whether we can instinctually let ourselves be completely in the moment and be completely spontaneous and able to react, and to interpret. And that is the key, is whether we can interpret things as processing through our minds, or whether we can just instinctually let go. So The other thing I want to talk about is animal cruelty. All around the world, with whales, who are some of the most stunning creatures in the world, and elephants, and all of that. There's all this hunting that occurs in the world. It's like we're trying to kill nature, and if you think about our food, a lot of that, most of it comes from animals. And it's this kind of, you can see when they're killing chickens and taking their taking their eggs away and everything like that. It's incredibly painful, and I mean, I wonder if it's deliberately that way, that we have to spear animals and cut their tusks off. And there's a couple interesting stories that I've heard about. The first one being that there was a whale that was over 200 years old, and they were able to see this because they were able to look at the harpoon, the spear that had been speared into this whale that it had carried around the ocean for, I think it was a blue whale, for hundreds of years, centuries. And when it came out, they were able to look at the thing, a piece of it that had come out, and analyze it, and they found it was over 200 years old. And I thought that was really an amazing thing, because it shows you that something can, swim around the ocean broken fundamentally, but still have that piece embedded in it. And I think this is similar to how people exist, is they do walk around with these wounds and these spears embedded in them from their childhood, or their lost love, or fucked up relationships with their parents, and they can exist, but that wound, that destruction, that brokenness becomes a part of them, and they can live for a very long time because it's kind of self-sustaining. And I guess if people took it out, they would be destroyed, because what made them who they are is that brokenness, that negativity. And when we try and psychologically take all these drugs to get as prescription medication to get us out of this mental funk, is that not embracing our flaws, our negatives? So that was something I found interesting. The other thing I found interesting was the idea that they had elephants that, as you know, with ivory, they cut off the tusks of elephants, and when they cut off the tusks of the elephants bleed to death. But they bleed to death really slowly. And what happens is that all the elephants actually come and gather around one that's dying, and they get really upset, and they start crying and sitting there and not eating and freaking out. And eventually, so many hunters were cutting the tusks off the elephants that some elephants were born without tusks. They actually, in their DNA, realized genetically that the reason they were being hunted was for their tusks. So that they interpreted that, from a Darwin point of view, and adapted to grow without tusks. And I think this is, again, links into our human experience, in the sense that we do adapt to the things that people attack us with. Is we take away the part of us, the most beautiful parts of us, that people try and kill us with. When you look at a lot of broken relationships, I feel like women are always they're always nicer than the guy. Some of the, a lot of the time. And I think that guys sometimes use that nicety, that kindness that a lot of women have against them. And I think then it becomes really difficult, because it's like you're trying to be nice to somebody as a woman, you're trying to be kind, and they're just throwing it in your face. So, to me, that kind of thing, like the idea that we can have really beautiful traits and personality parts of us, and then people attack them, and then we have to kind of get rid of them and adapt to get rid of them, or adapt to cover them up, to repress it, I think is terrible, because the most beautiful parts of us are the things that, people don't often look at. How many people look at women as objects? How many people go to the cinema and all they see is beautiful women on the screen and the television and everything, and it becomes this inability to see people for who they are. And beauty is a cool thing, it's a lovely thing, but it doesn't have to define who we are as people. And I just feel like so much has been, become destructive in our culture and very violent. And I think that it's just sad to think that some of our greatest qualities are taken away from us, and we have to repress them because people aren't happy about it. I remember when I went to school and I was a writer and I was quite talented at it, but people always were quite pressurized, or they were quite unhappy that I was writing this kind of stuff, and it made them angry because it was different. So I kind of hid it away sometimes, and I was like, sometimes I didn't do as well as I could have because and it's not like I was intelligent, much more intelligent than the other people. It was just I had a certain ability and aptitude to write. So I would try and not write very well sometimes just to cover it up. And I think that's terrible. I think that we should be encouraging people. And I see this with film as like not enough young people who want to get into the film industry. Their qualities are not encouraged. They have to feed through a very narrow system that kind of homogenizes people to be a certain way. I think this is wrong. I think you should find qualities in people that are really interesting and try and use those and inspire people from that. So those are just two animal stories that were circling around in my mind today. I also saw a really beautiful line of ants that had appeared on a table, and they were just walking around. And I don't know why ants do that. So I guess my question to everyone today is why ants suddenly appear. There was no food there. There was nothing that, I think they wanted, but they just formed a little line. My final story of the day is a story I heard from my parents, which is about an earthquake that they were in when they were in Thailand. And they saw that all the animals, all the little ants and the bugs and stuff were starting to form lines and were starting to, make patterns in their hotel room that were really weird, and they were all moving in the same direction, like they were interpreting what was going on in the ground, even though people couldn't interpret it. And I wonder, like, do animals, their senses, which I think is the realm of our experience. I always talk about experience in terms of a film. What is the experience of it? Well, the way we interpret experience is through senses. Sight, smell, feeling, taste, hearing, all of that. So, and touch. So film doesn't have some of those. You can't touch the people in the film. You can't feel temperature. You can't taste it. You can't smell it. You can only see and hear it. And long ago, you could only see it. You couldn't hear anything. So now you can see and hear it. But so it's quite limited in terms of really having the sense of something. If you go to a beach and you're there, and say you're eating you're drinking something on a beach, so you're getting the taste. You're also smelling the ocean air, the smell of the sand. You're feeling the sand on your body. You're hearing the waves. You're seeing everything. But you're feeling this full sensory experience. Film can't do that. But I want, it's interesting with animals because they seem to have greater sensory ability, like cats can see in the dark and things like that. So I wonder how animals if you made a film about the experiences of animals, because people are defined, I think, a lot about language. That's how we communicate. Now, animals don't communicate with language, they can't. But, so that, I think, defines where our art form comes from, which it started out when there was less languages in the world, or less civilizations. It was much more about paintings and what you see, like the Egyptian cave paintings and hieroglyphs and all of that. But then when it became about language and religion and the idea of communication, and there was more languages, but then English started to dominate, and now it's Spanish, is that it became about hearing and theater and music. But animals have very good hearing, very good sight, but how would you interpret an experience of a film that was based around the experience of an animal? How would you capture that? I feel so much of cinema and the technology of cinema, of cameras and everything, is about capturing the human experience. So if animals could create some sort of filmmaking experience for themselves, which they can because they can dream, and dream is the extension of film. How do they dream? How does a whale dream? How does a horse dream? How does a dog dream? Because I think that once you understand dreams, Once you understand the vivid nature of how dreams are selective, how you only see certain things, how you don't see it play out in reality, but you play out in your mind, in your consciousness, in your unconscious. How do animals dream? Because I think that would be the key to understanding what their kind of artistic language would be. And I wonder if there is art to animals. I mean, you look at whale song, and there's a huge amount of art to that. There's a huge amount of beauty in how they communicate. So these are just some of the questions that I was thinking about today, and I wanted to do a video about animals because I love them.